Okay, let's do another video. This time let's talk about how important it is for us, especially the creative types, not to fully adapt to society. Yeah, just wait. So let's talk about how important it is for us, especially like I said, the creative types, not to fully adjust to society. Because if you do, if you go along with everything, you won't have time. Society is just going to put its own agenda on you, and you just simply have no time for anything else. You're just going to run around and do what you're told, to be quite honest. Anyway, I'll read you a few sentences from a book that I'm reading now by Peter Kingsley, Catafalque. It's sort of a Jung, life of Jung through the eyes of Peter Kingsley. And Peter Kingsley calls himself a mystic, so I like his work. And this is in one of the chapters, I can't remember which one, but I'll read you, I've underlined it, what he says regarding this. Jung himself hints that the greatest strength of prophets, just like artists, so it refers to the artists like me, lies precisely in their failure to adapt, because this is the one way they can help bring the collective imbalance back again into balance. Exactly. Because like Krishnamurti said, you know, it's no great achievement to be to be adapted into a really sick society. And what he means by sick society, unbalanced society, a society which doesn't look into its own inner resources for guidance, but always relies on what it's told, what it's being said, what you have to do. The outside authorities, whether it is your parents, whether it is your spouse, whether it is the TV, the politician, the priest, you know, whoever it is in our society, and it's, you know, now it's social media and news networks and whatever it is that they demand of you to obey in a certain way, and people do, and we simply become like robots. Programmed robots. They put in the programming and we just carry out the orders. Yeah? Now I'll read you what I have written regarding this some years ago, and then I'll give you some examples from society, from history actually. So I'll talk about a little bit about Hafez, how he managed to, because he wasn't adapted to society fully, how he managed to become a conduit, a mediator between, through his poetry, between the spirit and people. Rabia of Basra, there are other examples. But first I'll read you something that I wrote regarding this. This was a few years ago, maybe 2 years ago. Someone once asked, how is it that you are so young and already know so much? I am not that young, but I know what I know. What can I do? I know because I listen to my dreams, and especially intuition and poetry and art. All these things are meaningful. That's how I know. I replied without hesitation. I didn't go in life the authorized way, right? The right education, the right career, followed by marriage, mortgage and kids, binding me to society's TV values and its authority and beliefs until I retire and perhaps finally be free in old age to contemplate all this silence wisdom. I went the unauthorized way. Exactly. If any of you have actually read my book, I forgot to put out my books here today, but I put them out now. Yeah, if any of you have read, especially Where We Dreamed a Single Dream, I go into detail the whole process of what happened to me, of being connected to intuition, to dreams, into the sacred, to the spirit, how then it began to teach me. So I wasn't learning from outside, I was being taught from inside. And when you have that connection, you could say with me, for instance, was from early age, all this education and all this society planning that it's got already mapped out path for you in life, it didn't really matter to me that much. I'll tell you one story. My first job, and everyone at that was my first or second day at that job. I was 18, and everyone at that place joined a union. So the man that came and assigned that people to join a union, he came knowing that I was there as a new employee to the lunch room where we had lunch, and he saw me enter, and then but I sat down, had my lunch, and I think he was waiting for me to come over and sign up, but I never did. I knew inside of me that's not for me. In other words, joining groups for people who are creative like myself, poets, artists, it's not an option. You have to do it alone, because you have your own connection now. You have your own inner authority that is asking you to follow the way that it's been your own unique way in life. That's just one example, but I mean, in the book I go through many examples where I had to walk away, especially from groups and so on. On Facebook there are some huge Jungian groups and so on, Jung groups, and most of them I have been thrown out of because of the way that I talk. You see, because it goes against the narrative, or against I speak with my own voice, not just copy and paste Jung's quote. That's probably the main reason why. So I will finish what I said here. So I went the unauthorized way. That's me. Following in the footsteps of nature's song, learning directly from my companion in life, the feminine mystery of the soul, first within through archetypal dreams and visions, and then without through creative goddess intuition. That's what it is. At least for me, for lots of people who are not really being, who are free to be able to be, like you could say, the mediators between the sacred and humanity in this life and society. And they have an access. They have this intuitive access, creative access to this flow of information that comes to them spontaneously. And then that information is asked of you to be communicated to society, to people. Like I shared with you the dream I had where I climbed the mountain. Remember that dream? I climbed up the mountain, and at the apex sat Jung and someone else, I can't remember who it was, and they were in discussion. And I took out my tarot cards, and Jung said, "No, let me lay the cards for you." And he took out the 3 cards, and in the center was the page not king, Knight of Wands, and that means victory. And then he said to me, "This is what you have to communicate to people, to teach people how to be centered, how to live from their own intuitive insights, because the core of the center is the feminine, and the core of the feminine is intuition." Yeah. So this is what he was communicating. I'm not a Jungian. I read Jung when I was younger, in my late 20s, and it resonated with me, especially his memories, dreams, reflections, because it resonated with my own life, my own process of becoming aware of who I really am. Yeah, it resonated. His life and my life were very similar. You have to walk away. He walked away from society for many years to find to recover the missing soul, the missing divine part of himself. He studies through alchemy and archetypal dreams and visions, not only of his dreams, but the dreams of his clients. And that's how he came to the realization that there is this deeper, wider psyche in humanity, the collective unconscious. And I shared with you in my last video my own discovery of this deeper, wider, of the oneness. I knew about the collective unconscious a long time before that, but you knowing and experiencing are completely different things. And in the dream where I went and traveled by the boat, and this figure, this guide was pulling the boat, remember that, to the other shore, to the island where I met all these king and queen, the whole court, and they were all archetypes. You know, the collective unconscious is a real reality, and this unity of your personal unconscious and the collective unconscious is the real wholeness. Then you realize that everything is one. There's one divinity that is reflecting itself uniquely in all these different cultures and people. Yeah. So I'll share with you a few examples of this deviation, you know, of the deviants, because that's what we're talking about. I'm a deviant. I haven't really, I've never properly assimilated into society. I live on the outskirts of society. By the way, shamans, traditionally shamans, they never lived in the village. They always lived outside the village. They always had their own place outside the village. Several reasons for that, but the first reason was because people were afraid of shamans, and they would kill them if they could, because of fear. When you fear something, you attack it. So shamans would live outside the village. A second reason was that the shaman didn't want to be part of the village's gossip and politics. They didn't want to be part of any of this. They had their own life, their own connection to the divine, and that's what they cared about. And people had to leave the village if they wanted to get the insights or get the shaman to help them. You see, shaman were the original mediators between the sacred and humanity, between their people and the divine and the spirit. One example of such a deviant, if you like, is, I don't know if you remember Hagrid in Harry Potter. Harry Potter is also another example of this. He never fully adjusted to society. He was always, outside. He lived in a place of people that didn't like him, didn't care for him. He lived under the stairs. Do you remember? And the stairs are a symbol of being that mediates, which links together above and below the spirit and humanity. But that's what Harry Potter was. That's why he had a lightning strike scar on his forehead. He was the intuition. And intuition is, if you're intuitive, then you're a representative of the intuition. And intuition is not welcome in our society, especially in our Western society, which only values the rational mind. The intuitive mind, the irrational, is laughed at, is scoffed at. The decisions that I made in my life, if you want to read my book, no one understood my decisions. How can they understand these decisions if the decision was given to me in a dream? You tell that to people, they're going to look at you funny. I had a dream, so I had to go and do it. Yeah, that's it. That was most of my decisions. I had a dream, so I had to go and do it. I had a dream about this, so I went that way. I had a dream about that, so I went that way. Yeah. Okay. So, Hagrid. Why Hagrid? Well, because Hagrid also lived outside the village. Remember his hut? His hut was outside the city, outside Hogwarts. Hogwarts is the school of wizardry and magic, yeah? And Hagrid lived outside, and he lived on a border between the forest and the city and the civilized life. So he's the mediator between the unconscious and the conscious, between the world of the unknown, the forest, the spirits, and the world of the humans. So he's another example of a deviant, like myself. Like many of you, I'm sure that you're watching this. Some of you know they are also deviants, never really fully adjusted. Okay, so this is Hafez. I think I shared with you some of these stories of Hafez or Rabbi of Basra, but anyway, we'll go through it again. So this is what happened to Hafez before he started to become a mediator. You know, he got sort of, you could say, not adjusted, but he got disappointed in life deeply. And that's when he started to not care so much about adjusting to society, but actually be writing poetry, so that he was a conduit, a mediator between the sacred and people. So, according to one tradition, before meeting his self-chosen Sufi master Haji Zayn al-Azata, Hafez had been working in a bakery, delivering bread to a wealthy quarter of the town. There he first saw Sheikh Nabat, a woman of great beauty to whom some of his poems are addressed. He fell in love with her anyway. Ravished by her beauty, but knowing that his love for her would not be requited, he allegedly held his first mystic vigil in his desire to realize his union. Still, he encountered a being of surpassing beauty who identified himself as an angel, and his further attempts at union became mystic, a pursuit of spiritual union with the divine. So his union with this woman that he fell in love fell into a heap. He knew that he would never be, she would never like him, she would never want him. So being completely disappointed, shattered by life, he devoted himself to being a mystic, to writing poetry, to help humanity move forward, to make it, to balance the imbalance, because the imbalance is we have no connection to the spirit. That's the imbalance. We completely severed the connection to the spirit. That's why we're in such a crisis of consciousness. Like I write on all my posts pretty much every day. That's the reason we are in such a terrible crisis of consciousness, because we have severed the connection to the spirit. We have completely severed the connection to the unconscious through our dreams, through our visions, not even mentioning intuition. Even Peter Kingsley, I think, at the front of the book says intuition can be sometimes right, sometimes wrong. I don't know. Mine is pretty accurate, I can say that much. This is Rabia of Basra, her story. What happened to Rabia? That's why she never really assimilated into society, and then she became a famous poet, a Sufi, mystic Sufi, a saint really. So, what happened to Bazia? One of the many stories that surrounded her life is that she was freed from slavery because her master saw her praying while surrounded by light, realized that she was a saint, and feared for his life if he continued to keep her as a slave. So that's one story. Another story is that she freed herself really. No one really saw anything, but she just managed to free herself. Biographer Riva Kono discovered her main characteristic, Rabia, okay, Sufi. Okay, so much of so after trope modern period. After a life of hardship, she spontaneously achieved a state of self-realization. In other words, she knew who she was and what she was connected with. When asked by Hasan al-Basri how she discovered her secret, she responded by saying, "You know of the how, but I know of the how less." In other words, you have the instructions, but I don't need the instructions. I have my own direct connection to the mystery, through mysticism, to the spirit. And she, after her realization, after her life of being freed from slavery, after writing poetry, she kept completely to herself. She had no partners, she had no relationships, nothing like that. Her whole relationship then became with the sacred, with the spirit. Yeah. So I've written a few examples. I've already given you a few examples of the deviants, of the people that are not well adjusted. I'm not well adjusted. And I think my sister always says, you always live under the radar, the whole life. Under the radar. Not adjusted at all. I had what? How can I? Yeah, I had once. I had a credit card. My first job when I was 18. I got rid of it at 21 because they kept on nagging me about this or that. I think I wasn't making repayments. It was only $300, and I think I wasn't making regular repayments. So I tore it up and gave him back all the money to her. I've never had one again since. So that's how crazy it gets, especially with me. So we said, I said Hagrid, yeah. I said Harry Potter. Shamans, Hafez, Rabia of Basra. Who else do we have? Oh, we have Neo of Matrix. He didn't. The only way he got out is because he never really was fully in the Matrix. He was a deviant already, although he had a job as a computer specialist or something. On the side, he was creating software, pirated software for people that they could do hacking and whatnot. So he was already, he was already working outside the system to help others to get out, if you like. So that's Neo of Matrix. I can think of many others. For instance, Luke Skywalker in Star Wars. Yeah, he never really adjusted because as soon as he saw his family, his foster family, not his real family, got murdered, there was nothing for him to come back to. The farm was destroyed. He became a pupil of Obi-Wan Kenobi, of Jedi Master. So he never really adopted to his culture. He was already a deviant at a young age. That's how he became a master in what he was doing. He was, I don't know if you remember the way that he was being taught by Obi-Wan Kenobi how to do it. How to just trust the Force. When he was blindfolded, he had the helmet on, the helmet was closed, and this ball just spontaneously moved around in front of him, and he held the lightsaber, the light sword, and he had to hit it. And how did he do it eventually? No mind. He was taught you have to trust the Force, you have to trust your intuition. Another example that comes to mind with this is a movie, I think The Last Samurai with Tom Cruise. And there's a moment there where Tom Cruise plays this American cavalry officer who goes to Japan to help the emperor quell the last stand of the samurai. And he ends up being friends. He gets kidnapped by the samurai, and then he ends up being friends with them, and they are teaching him how to fight with the sword, and he's terrible at it. This master, the swordsman, is teaching him, and Tom Cruise as the American officer is losing all the time. And one young samurai runs up to him and says, "No mind, no mind." Remember, no mind. In other words, don't think about it. Just trust the flow. And then he gathers, then Tom Cruise gathers his thoughts. He kind of centers, and that's when it starts to work. You have to not hesitate. You just have to go with the flow. And that's a way of a deviant. That's a way of someone who's not adjusted. You've got to be not adjusted to be able to trust your own resources. Because when you're adjusted, all the information, all the instructions are going to be shouted at you. Yeah? You have to be like a lone wolf. That's another video I was going to do. A lone wolf, the symptom of a lone wolf, where when you work best by yourself. When instructions are shouted at you, that's when you don't do very well at all. I don't do very well at all when instructions are given to me. You go from A to Z and everything is going to be fine. That's not. You have to leave me alone. I work it out and then it works. School was terrible for me. That's why I wrote that little piece that I just read you. I didn't like school because you had to remember things. He had to sponge up all this information, and the people that were the best at regurgitating the information, understanding what they were told in a way that was satisfactory to the teacher, to the teaching system, to the education system, they were the best students. The ones that actually had creativity and were able to solve the problem in a different way, creative way on their own, were not welcome. I did a video about this. Kids, as you know, we're born geniuses and then we're dumbed down in society. Remember that video? It was actually a study done by NASA, how kids, before they enter school, 95% genius, and then slowly as they are educated and so on, slowly that ability is taken away from them. And they simply forget how to solve problems on their own, through their own intuitive way. And they just become like the rest of the society, remote controlled robots. They do what they told. And that's what society wants you to do, by the way, because you're easier to manage that way. I might do a video about this, because this is really important to understand. That if you have your own resources, if you don't need what the society is telling you, this was especially evident in the church, in the Catholic, in the Christian and the Catholic Church. That's why the Catholic Church went so hard after people like the witches and so on. It's because they had their own direct access to the divine, to the sacred. They didn't need the church. And if you don't need the church doesn't have power. It's the same thing with authority. If you have your own access to instructions and directions in your life, you don't need the outside authority. You don't need the politicians. You don't need the TV. You don't need the newspapers to tell you what to do, the glossy magazines, social media. Then you're dangerous. You're not welcome in a society like this, because you might tell others that they can be free as well, that they don't need these people to tell them what to do, and then these people are not necessary. So how are they going to hold on to power? How are they going to hold on to the jobs, to the very well paid jobs? How are they going to hold on to the prestige, to the elite status, where they are on the ladder of the pyramid of the power? The closer you get to the center of power, the more powerful and the more wealthy you are. So if you don't need them, you're dangerous to them. So I might do a separate video about this, but this is really what I wanted to talk to you. There's a lot more here in the book that it's written regarding this problem, if you like, for society. That if you don't, for society is a problem, but for us, the creative types, the people that are mediating perhaps for between spirit and humanity, the poets, the artists, you cannot be fully adjusted, because if you fully adjusted, you're not any help. Because what is required in society is this ability to go away, live your own life, have your own connection, your own inner connections, and then you can. Then once you receive some instructions, receive some information, you can share that to society. That the whole purpose of human life is to be in balance. You be one eye looking inward and one eye looking outward, like Odin. That's why in Norse legend and Norse mythology, Odin is the highest god. He looks both ways. And that's the mediator's job. That's a poet. That's a real artist. That's a prophet, by the way, too. A poet and prophet are not that far away. They're usually exactly the same thing. Yeah. So that's what I wanted to talk to you about today, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.